guess it looks like some people are still working their way in.
Right. Yes. Typically, I think of open space as the land that has not been built on.
Alrighty.
Is that correct?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight in what is our second knowledge series of our MBTA Communities and Reading forums. So we'll be starting tonight with a brief presentation to re-emphasize the law, what it is, the work we've done to date, where we're going with it, and then we're going to follow that with some brief workshop practices that you see around your table and you've already kind of been messing with. So we're going to, really help guide this discussion based on zoning dimensional controls and zoning mapping. So it should be a very exciting night. I'm joined tonight by Senior Planner Mary Benedetto over here and Economic Development Director Benjamin Cares in the back, who will help facilitate our table discussions. I'll join you guys' group after the brief presentation. So thank you again. And for those who don't know, I'm Andrew McNichol, the Community Development Director in town, and help staff the planning team and others. So let's just jump right into it and get started. Our goals tonight. Number one goal tonight is to help everyone understand the relationship between zoning controls and the real world builds, as well as the considerations we have to make when seeking compliance with what is the MBTA community's law. So there's a lot at play here and they all come together. Our second goal is for us as staff to receive guidance from you as the public and residents before we begin to finalize our proposals. The concepts tonight, again, that we'll be discussing come down to setbacks, height requirements, other dimensional controls, lot shapes like lot sizes and frontage requirements, and then other controls like parking, massing, and then after that we'll jump into the district mapping practice. So before all of that, let's refresh on what exactly the law says, what it is, and what it means for Reading. This has been a long-standing regional law that has been forthcoming for some time now because of the fact that the state's housing production has fallen behind its increased demand and its growing population. So housing development has not kept up with pace of growth. There's a lot of factors that have come into that we explained at our previous forum just last month. If you have not watched that video or seen the recording online, I would very much encourage you to visit the project webpage because we had an hour-plus long presentation on all of the history of the region to remove barriers to development for multifamily housing within their zoning bylaws in order to make future development of denser housing closer to transit more possible and feasible. So it's really focused around multifamily housing zoning that is by right, in short. The state had to choose a way to confirm that the municipalities are complying with their various requirements. So they came up with what we call zoning capacity and district requirements. Before we move on, it's just important to note that each municipality has its own unique set of requirements, from land size requirements to unit capacity requirements, but everybody has to equally hit at least 15 units per acre across their zoning district. Reading has multiple ways for compliance, which is why we've been working to date and are here tonight to help guide us on how you see compliance best fitting for the town. So what does it mean for Reading? That's probably the question on everybody's mind. Reading is classified as a commuter rail community, which means that at least half of our zoning district that we'll be looking to apply has to be within a half mile of the Reading train depot downtown. We have to reach compliance by December 2024, and we must have a district for by right multifamily zoned capacity. That's an important term, zoned capacity of just under 1,500 residential units at a density of that 15 units per acre. Our zoning district has to reach at least 43 acres or more and reach that density across it. And importantly, again, when we talk about multifamily housing and zoning, we're talking about 3+ units on a single lot. It can be 3, it can be 4, it can be 6, 12, or more. So it has to be by right, which again, we explained at our last presentation. And while we're at the tables, we're happy to answer any questions tonight on that, on what that means. But let's jump ahead a bit, because what's important is we don't have any zoning districts that exist today that meet all of these requirements, which means we have to amend zoning or create new zoning for compliance. And that's part of the reason we're here tonight. Zoning capacity. What is it? It's kind of a new term that many are unfamiliar with. So what we mean by zone capacity is that it's effectively treating the lot within the zone as if it were vacant and is asking what could be built on it today under the current zoning. To determine your zoning capacity, you would look at that lot and how many housing units could maximally be built upon it on every parcel in that district based on what the zoning allows, regardless of what exists on it today. So if that zoning allows for up to 4 units on a lot, the zoning capacity could be 4 on the lot, even if there's a single family structure on it. And that's what's important about zoned capacity. It is not a requirement nor a mandate to build, nor is it a measure of what will be built. It's just what could possibly be built through the zoning. So what we've done to date is looked at our districts knowing that we didn't comply. We wanted to better understand what their limitations were, and why we don't reach compliance. We looked at the Business A zoning, which is all down South Main Street. We looked at our downtown smart growth district zoning, and we looked at the A40 zoning in this specific area. What we found was that none of these districts comply, and for a variety of reasons, but most predominantly, a vast majority, probably 90+% of the lots are non-conforming. They don't reach today's standards, which are quite high. So, I didn't mean to jump ahead that far. A lot of the lots don't meet the district lot size requirements under S15, for example, which is the pink, our single family residential 15 zoning. It's a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. About 90+% of the lots in S15 don't reach 15,000 square feet. So that, in effect, when we look at compliance for the tools, means that those lots aren't being calculated because they can't achieve a by right multifamily build, or a single family build for that matter. So we've looked at all of these zones. You can see some of the numbers here. The total acreage might be close for some of them, but the unit capacity nor density doesn't achieve it, the goals. So what we're looking at is new zoning that hits all 3 of those parameters. Now knowing that we did not comply and what our limitations were under the existing zoning, we could start to consider, well, what would be possible? But that's an answer that we really couldn't answer ourselves and needed a lot of feedback from you guys as residents, as the town. So what we did was a pretty substantive and long-lasting public engagement plan that lasted all summer long and prior to. We visited many boards and committees to understand their concerns. We've tabled at many summer and public events, and we also released a survey. So that's one of the more important elements that we'll briefly discuss right now. Our survey had just over 750 responses, and the survey's primary goal was to provide actionable steps for staff to take as to the preferred types of multifamily housing that they feel fits Reading best. And then subsequently, where does that form of multifamily housing fit? And what are your potential concerns with that multifamily housing? Overwhelmingly, what we heard through the survey is that smaller unit builds, triplex, fourplexes, and low-rise buildings, call them less than 4 stories, were overwhelmingly favored as the form of multifamily housing in town. And mid-rise development, 4+ stories, came in last in almost every question we asked it in. And those you could consider like our downtown developments, mid-rise, mixed-use, higher dense models of housing. So we've heard that these forms are the preferred type of multifamily housing, and we were able to take away a few other things from that as well. Respondents preferred these multifamily buildings with fewer units, smaller stories, and that also had a bit more house-like architectural appearance to them. And we also know that their concerns revolve, and we also know that they would like to see them located near public transit, near open space, and near amenities that they can walk to and feel safe in. So when we talk about concerns, what we've heard is that respondents highlighted traffic, open space, and changes to neighborhood character as their top concerns with new multifamily housing, which are common concerns that we hear on all new development. So to help understand what those forms look like, we wanted to provide a visual. This over here on this end where it says mid-rise, you could almost consider as our downtown, our higher dense use multifamily housing. And on this end here, you could consider this our pretty standard single family housing zones, which is most dominant in town. When we talk about these missing middle units, multifamily forms that we'll call them right now, we're talking about everything in between here. Duplexes, fourplexes, courtyards or townhomes that could allow up to 6 units on a lot. Anything in there that kind of achieves a moderate dense, gentle density multifamily housing. So this is the forms that we've heard preferred, and this is where we're trying to guide the zoning and what we'll be taking to tonight to see if you agree. And if you agree that these forms are desirable and fit Reading, where would you like to see them fit and how they work on a lot? So, let's see. Oh, before I jump ahead, what's important is that this looks very linear, right? Straight and narrow. It's not in real life. Geography doesn't work that way. I know Main Street runs up and down through the whole town, but we don't have a corridor that exactly works this way. So we have to kind of think of it as a circle. We have our downtown core, our dense core, and we want to support that around all of its edges with these type of missing middle uses that help support it, supplement it, feed it life. And then from there, we can branch out to and keep our single family districts, keep our single families that people are vying for and dreaming of, like myself. So it's important to have all mixed use of options and variety of housing stock that is able to achieve what a mix of people are looking for, whether that's young families and adults looking to find their first way into homeownership, or older generations looking to downsize. So the mix is very important, and that's what we've heard, and that's great. So what does that really again come back to Reading? How does it work? We took that feedback and started looking at our local geography and zones, and we can tell based on the survey results and feedback we've heard to date that the preference actually sounds to be that we get all of the zoning requirements within this half-mile radius here. And I know we have a minimum of 43 acres that we have to achieve, but fitting it all within this half-mile is extremely plausible because we have over 300 acres of developable single-family zones in this half-mile alone, let alone the rest of the town where we could potentially outreach to if desired. We know that A40 up here is a natural fit to start, but it alone is not enough because it doesn't achieve the minimum acreage requirements. And what that means is that if we were to start pursuing this concept and moving forward with it, you're likely looking at branching out into these S15 districts to help reach compliance. And we know that we want it to be equally distributed across this entire region to promote harmony and also lessen any impacts like school enrollment in districts, sewer and water, keep the character consistent around this whole zone. And again, getting back to that idea that you want to support your downtown and your mid-rise and your denser core around all of its edges to keep it healthy. And there's a lot of good neighborhoods in here. So our full intention with this concept is for the exterior form of any potential new multifamily buildings to follow dimensional controls that are pretty similar to what currently exists now in our single-family zoning district and their requirements. We know that there's a few things that have to come down, right? Lot sizes have to change, frontage might have to change. We might anticipate some change to setbacks, but we're looking to try to keep it substantially similar to what exists today for single-family development so that it's not one against the other, and that this zone could allow for all those types of mix of uses. The only difference would be the interior configuration and how many units that structure can hold. When we look at what those parameters are that exist today, we're looking at S15 up here. Again, 15,000 square foot lot size requirement, 100 feet of frontage requirement, 20-foot setback in the front, 20 foot in the rear, 15 side, 25% lot coverage, and a 35-foot building height. That's pretty big controls, right? So try to keep yard space, try to promote, big lot development, big single-family dwelling development that we've seen on a number of subdivisions over the recent years. What's again important is that zoning controls apply to new lots and new development only. So all of these factors have to be put on for any new structure looking to comply with the lot or new subdivision. Let's take a look at how it works in real time. This is an 8,000 square foot lot, just under, down off Village Street, and this was a recent proposal for a 4-unit dwelling. This dwelling actually achieved those setbacks. It has 18 feet on this side, I believe 18 feet on this side, 20 in the front, 20 in the rear. Its average height is 32 feet. I think it's 30 in the front, 36 in the rear, 3 stories to 4 in the rear due to the grade. It achieves its parking. Great, our zoning actually worked for this one. 8,000 square foot lot. Means it's possible, at least for this development. Not all lots are square like this, not all lots have the right to do this. This was a pre-existing structure and pre-existing 4-unit use. It had to go through months of zoning board process hearings and CPDC hearings to follow that before it could even consider applying for a building permit. It was a lengthy process to get what was a pre-existing 4-unit dwelling to be rebuilt and improve the neighborhood at the same 4 units. Let's kind of take that one step further, looking at Prescott Street, another recent application, 3-unit dwelling, pre-existing, on a 6,000 square foot lot. All of a sudden you start to kind of realize, hey, that's not really achieving our maximum parameters here. We're a little short on the front and rear. We have a little tighter here on the side at 10 feet. However, it's important to note that this, in essence, is able to fit everything else. It fits the parking requirement. It has landscape. We're looking at permeable driveways to help improve stormwater and runoff, and it maintained its existing structure. It's under the 35 feet height. I believe it's 34 feet total, and 3 units right off Prescott Street. So things get a little tighter when you look at smaller lots, right? But I don't know if I would say that this was an improvement. It was a derelict building, neglected building that the developer came in and is rebuilding currently. So again, it took months of hearing processes through zoning board and CPDC, one after another, to rebuild a pre-existing 3-unit structure based under the current zoning. So let's move forward to start considering what we again mean by these forms that we're looking to promote in our potential new zoning. We just wanted to throw up a few examples here. Some are located in Reading. Some of these are renderings that we found across the internet. But 4 units here across 2 stories, 3 units here across 3 stories high. Maybe this is 6 to 8 units, somewhere in between there. 3 units, this could be 2 to 4 units. All of these forms are possible on the variety of lot sizes that we have existing in this area today. And that's where we're here to help guide this discussion on how do we start to, fit these into the existing lots and what does that look like for zoning. So when we talk about designing a lot, again, talking about setbacks, we're talking about lot coverage, and we're talking about parking. We're going to take a small break here from the presentation and open up to small group facilitation and workshopping at the tables here. Again, our staff will help kind of facilitate and lead those calls, but what we'll do is run through setbacks and their requirements and how that impacts different lot sizes. We'll maybe change those setbacks up in real time with you because we have the ability to do that through these cutouts. And then we'll we'll look at parking. We have parking in there, we have trees, we have all sorts of things that we can start to workshop around and see how this impacts a real building structure and what it means to fit on a building on a lot with these setbacks. So I hope I covered everything. We'll take the break there and open it up to the tables.
Okay, everybody. Here, I'm Mary. Hello.
Everything.
All
right. Thank you. That's an hour 15 minutes is never easy, but we try. So we're going to start with the grids here at the table, and we're going to start at the top one on the 12,000 square feet. And everybody should have had an envelope at their seat. And what we have in that envelope is setbacks in the green. So every block here is 1 inch. Every 1 inch equals 10 feet. So keep that in mind, because what we're going to start at the 12,000 square foot is the existing setbacks. We have in pink your dwelling sizes. Each of these represents 25% to 30% on their relevant lot sizes. So you'll find a 25% lot size or dwelling size for a 12,000 square foot lot. So that's 3,000 square feet in that case. What we also have in the envelopes, yellow represents parking spaces, and blue represents historical trees, stormwater, kind of a variety of things that you think might also have to factor into a lot development. So I'm going to ask everybody to start by putting on the minimum setbacks that are required today on the 12,000 square foot lot, which again is 15 on the sides, 20 on the front. It's the top row there on the table. And then see how you're, keep in mind for dwelling size, unit counts that you want to build, whether it's 3 units, 4 units, 6, what you kind of prefer, you're only limited to your own creativity, I guess.
What we're trying to understand is within the parcel.
So every square is an inch, every inch is 10 feet. So the larger strips are 10-foot setbacks, and the thinner strips are 5-foot setbacks.
That's why these parameters come into play. That makes sense? Your grant, there are a lot of
It's
houses.
not easy for everybody. You can sit and listen, and
15
But
15 on the sides,
they're pre-existing.
and the back.
20 on the back.
Okay, so 20 in the front and the back.
Yep.
How is the front and the back determined?
So front setbacks are determined by what we call your frontage, which is your along a right-of-way or a street. So corner lots have a bit of play to them at times, but typically anywhere from a right-of-way is your front.
Pre-existing, I would have to.
I know.
You should have.
You gotta use the middle.
You do have to use the little ones. And there's a reason for that. So
So this is, you're using this to assume that
Once you have your setbacks, you have the basement
a
houses,
minimum,
right?
well, have a 12,000.
no, so we just we're gonna use this as our base to understand that larger lot sizes maybe have less restrictions than smaller lot sizes that we'll be moving down to in a minute. So for those of you that have your dwellings on your lot and your setbacks done, think about how many number of units you want on your dwelling. 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Actually, I'm going to ask you to do multifamily. 3 plus units. So when you look at the parking, we currently require 1.5 spaces per unit for multifamily parking units. Yep. So I like to do 4 units, which is 5 parking spaces. Yellow is the parking. See if you can make it fit on your lot. It can span into setbacks if you have to.
Can you put them on some?
Yep, setbacks can be open space or parking.
Oh,
I don't like it. I feel more like parking spaces going in the front yard.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think pushing structures towards the front, say 10-foot setback from the front opens up rear yard space and gets people a bit more private amenity space in their backyards. On the side or in the bar. Yeah.
Every unit requires 1.5
Yep.
spaces to park. So we have the map up there.
So you yep.
Do garages count as parking?
Garages will have specified parking counts.
I mean, if the building had a garage, that's included in the 1.5 per unit?
Yeah, so if someone came in with a garage proposal, we'd be looking at the measurements and seeing how many vehicles can fit within that. And
Yeah.
if it's 2, we'll say that counts as 2 parking spaces. Yeah. So I like to consider 4 units, that's 6 parking spaces. It should be your biggest card, 25%. So you, yep, go ahead.
Parking has to be set back, and if you
The
are
parking does not have to be set back. So parking can be within your setbacks or not. But you do have to consider that there has to be enough space for turning movements to work as we consider.
What?
that's a footprint.
But this doesn't, this break, this.
That's the maximum
doesn't
building
fit it. But when we
footprint
did like, I thought when we did like the Johnson business on one.
Do a 3-family?
Still on go.
3
I
unit?
know, 20 years later. They were restricted in terms of.
It looks like it with your parking.
But now, so really, who's next door to that house, same building. That's very,
Yeah.
very dense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind it, I think it's much better. But that's.
I agree, the bedrooms are dense in it, but zoning cannot control bedrooms, nor under MBTA communities can we control bedrooms. 'Cause
I'm not that I'm saying that. I
No.
agree with it, but
a special permit PRD, very large scale development, and we went through the proposal, it was before my time, but we went through it with the developer, almost building by building, style by style, unit counts, bedroom counts, affordable units, parking, road layouts, like it was a large scale development. So there was that more, I guess, internal review of the structures. We do look at the internal structure, we get floor plans, we look at them. Zoning just can't restrict bedroom counts and on single family, 2-family, 3-family, and especially under MBTA communities. So
Andrew, does, the drive, the parking spot by the driveway, can that be placed back
so
in the
the
side
current
area
is
as well?
1.5.
yes, yeah. So there's some, at times we look to avoid that, right? Like downtown, we try to have parking in the rear and access through non-resident, primary residential areas, but driveways can be in the side setback as well.
Yeah, so like, yeah, building. You're the developer.
Driveway.
The 12,000 square feet is not bad. I got my parking, I got my house.
It's always been there.
Okay.
And whenever it comes to the snow, it's been a problem. You have no place to put the snow.
Yeah.
We're lucky our vendor did all of that stuff.
I got some space to play with.
Right, it's been, but I asked, so I have 2 driveways, 2 different
How's
houses.
everyone feel? Feel like you got space?
Yeah, yep, and many communities face that, and it's like that for single-family dwellings, it's not specific to multi-family, driveways only, so I understand that.
Is this the house next to the train station that's been gutted?
Yeah.
I just drove accidentally past it today.
Parking can go within your setbacks.
So without getting too much more distracted, so you might be able to tell by now your 12,000 square foot lot size actually really isn't all that restricted, and you can fit on a pretty decent sized dwelling, whether that's 3, 4, 5 units, whatever builder can fit in their floor plan. That actually works out pretty well. You can fit the parking on the site, you can fit the structure on the site, you got plenty of setbacks because you have your setbacks on this lot, your neighbor is going to have their setbacks on their lot. So it all ends up working out pretty well. What happens when we start looking at 8,000 square foot lots? So take your setbacks. Yep.
So on other sheet of paper, we have 8,000 to 5,000 square feet. 8,000 square feet represents the median.
12,000 square foot minimums, no.
Half mile radius. the 8,000 square
Wait,
feet.
so if you only selected the lots that were 12,000 square feet,
Take our current requirements again,
flip them to allow multi-housing structures, you would not be hitting the benchmarks.
I would not be hitting unit capacity nor density required.
It's going way down.
It's going way down. Yep. So,
20 in the front and back, 15 on the
Parking's an issue.
parking is being considered and thought of very deeply because we know it's an issue.
Can we remove parking minimums?
We can remove parking minimums should the town meeting decide to vote that way. I would say, you know, parking minimums are likely to come down a hair. They're 1.5 right now. We'd be looking at 1 to 1.25 per unit. But builders very much consider parking for all of their developments, whether that's dense multifamily or smaller multifamily. They're looking for parking that meets the current demand and that they know that their future tenants are gonna want. And so, you know, having a lesser minimum is great, but you're probably still gonna see more parking than that because they know that they're gonna want 1 to 2 spaces per unit. So that's why minimums are great. Like a minimum setback is 10 foot. Someone could still do 20-foot setbacks if they want to, and the lot kind of is designed that way. So that's the ideal of setting minimums over maximums.
Can I put this here?
Nope. So you're gonna find a different pink square. Yep. Again, if you look at your 8,000 square foot lot, put on your setbacks real quick.
It's 2x3 for it.
Setbacks,
You're making the zoning now.
Nope. Nope. Your parking can be within your setbacks. But if we see parking in setbacks, we are typically always asking for landscape or screening or fencing to separate those uses.
Minimum lot size for our new district will absolutely.
So if you look at your 20, 20, and 15s again,
Exactly how low we'll go.
we're getting there. We're getting there.
So the way we're thinking about lot size.
3,000 square feet, is that per
Here, from
level
average areas are
It would likely, you know, it could be per level. I would say when you start adding in utility spaces and the parking is probably gonna eat into that, and porches that are gonna eat into setbacks, you're looking at a little lesser than 3,000 per level. That's also a gross floor area, not a net square area for livable spaces after your interior walls are placed.
So this was a 4-family resident home, and we have a limitation of 3 floors right now.
Yes, 35 feet. Yep. Which actually we'll be planning to keep that, so that's not gonna go up. That's a tough sell.
So then we're looking at 9,000 feet, right?
Gross potentially,
Before we
yeah.
put all the walls.
Right, yeah. But, yep.
answer the question.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say the 35 feet is measured against where?
So 35 feet height is typically based on your average grade of the site, which is a very convoluted way to measure height, but because grades on lots vary so much, that's just how we do it from the 4 corners. So if, like that Village Street example, it was 32 feet in the front, but 36 in the rear because the slope just went so far down, but the average came to 34. So
So buy the land and dump a bunch of dirt.
fill is important sometimes. Fill, you know, we do limit fill, and fill's expensive. You don't see a lot of fill being brought in sometimes because it's a hassle to dispose and bring in fills. So, yeah, please do. So at any time, I know I'm answering questions, but at any time, just keep messing with this yourself. If you lower setbacks on your property, if you add more units. But when we start looking at the 8,000 square foot lot and a max build of 25% lot coverage, if I want to start fitting in 6 parking spaces, we're getting a little tight here. It's not easy. So, and can you get around properly, let alone if you had a tree here that you want to save, and your stormwater is going to go over here, so you really can't have any impervious area. 8,000.
For lower front setback.
I personally agree with you. So,
Okay, so now answer me the same question. All these, if we made this the zone capacity at 8,000.
so 8,000 square foot lots are just under our median average size lot in that entire half-mile radius. 8,000 is the median. It's kind of where we started looking at because it's the median and what can fit on it and what we can do with it. It doesn't get enough lots into compliance because you have 300-ish lots in the area that are between 5,000 and 8,000 square feet. So what you're kind of going to see in the next turn, that 8,000 is pretty limited, right, for 4 units. It's kind of starting to naturally phase itself out of 4-unit possibility in the world of multifamily housing. If we take that one step further and look at 5,000 square foot minimum lot sizes, let's see what that looks like with setbacks and parking for 4 units.
And in addition to the minimum lot,
5,000 is on the back of your 8.
changes to
Paper.
setbacks and parking, minimum parking.
Do you know how many lots there are in the circle that aren't built on, that are owned? Like my neighborhood has a few, they're all small,
Yep.
which is probably why.
I do have,
And how does that fit in?
so those are unique. So, all of a sudden I will answer your question. So vacant lots are,
Lots of them.
so there's a few I would say.
Because the lots are 6,000 square feet, all of them. So a lot of people have it back from when 100 years
Yeah,
ago.
so if it's under common ownership, it's in zoning considered one lot. If they're adjoining and abutting, it's
And the same
considered-
owner and.
I've highlighted the ones that I know are vacant and separate based on GIS, so I don't have the count off the top of
Yeah.
my head, but there's a handful.
Well, it must be a lot in our, I think our neighborhood has.
At least 3 that we know of.
I want to say closer to the Ash Street area, there's a small handful, and maybe I'll put by Middlesex. So,
Size unit,
here, looking at it, is yours, is mine?
stealing mine, that's fine.
We're looking at a 1,250 square foot house. Yep.
Do you
Yep.
know by how much this gets
Wouldn't that
reduced?
make sense to get rid of the parking minimums in downtown area?
Can't go to 5
I'm not gonna go to 5-foot setbacks, but, so, when you start,
Different options are kind of up there.
yeah, so, yep, and exactly. So when you start looking at 5,000 square foot lots based on underlying zoning, and you want to add a by right 4-unit building with 6 parking spaces, it's near impossible. These small lots, despite counting as unit capacity, if we did this up to 6 units, despite the zoning capacity allowing and saying that lot is 6 units by right, it's naturally in the built world working itself out of even 4 units, let alone 6. So you'd be looking at 1, 2, maximum 3 on smaller lots. So that's the point we're trying to make with these, that we can lessen the controls a bit. These things still naturally phase themselves out of denser development because there's just not enough space for it. So I do agree that eliminating parking minimums can be a benefit. We want to incentivize transit use, walking in the pedestrian atmosphere. In the reality, parking is going to be built, and we feel that a minimum still applies, at least in our geography, in our area. We very much want to build a long-term vision for this half-mile sphere and beyond it, that is looking at bike lanes, looking at sidewalks, looking at all of these other elements, street trees and climate safety, and all of these elements that really start to harmonize back to your downtown, rather than just like, we focus on our downtown for how long now, 10, 15 years. It's time to kind of start looking at those surrounding neighborhoods and making sure they can safely and adequately and have multiple options to get there and use it. So the zoning is one piece piece of that and supporting it with moderate density and uses. Our job doesn't stop there. We have to plan for sidewalk infrastructure, bike infrastructure, water and sewer, stormwater, and those are all discussions that we're already having with engineering departments, school departments, DPW departments. Everybody's aware that we're kind of moving forward with MBTA community zoning. It's just then kind of understanding the questions that we're asking ourselves to best be prepared. So zoning is kind of step one, getting the use in, and then understanding what that looks like in build time, how fast development is happening. I would say when you're looking at remodeling single-family zoning, it's less quickly than you saw in the downtown, right? Because it's up to individual property owners when they're selling, if they're selling. Are they selling to another home buyer who's just a young family trying to move in? Are they selling to a developer who might be looking for more? Are they themselves looking to add a second unit for their family? So it's more of a natural slow growth when you look at a concept like this. You know, of course, I don't know if 3 adjacent lots all sell at the same time. It's very unlikely, but could it happen? Potentially. But I would say, again, that's unlikely.
Question, you say the current minimum lot size is 15,000?
Correct.
For it to be by right?
Correct.
So pretty much almost certainly going to move that to 5,000 so that most properties count.
That is our likely to be our proposal. Starting proposal is a 5,000 square foot minimum and likely a 60-foot frontage, because that gets us about a 90% lot compliance.
And then after that, that's when we start looking at those 3 variables up there essentially.
Yep. So that's when you start considering setbacks and parking and making sure that these lots can achieve, at least some of these lots can achieve 3-unit minimums to count in the tool and help get us the density needed.
Is it possible, just like this slide here, top right there, replace the current with above 12,000 or above, 5 feet less, 8,000 and above, and 5,000 and above. Are you able to do that in your zoning?
Yeah, so you're jumping ahead to one of my questions. I guess my question would be that, how would you feel about smaller lots having lesser restrictions and larger lots maybe having the same restrictions as exist today? So that way we're opening up the smaller lots, but keeping larger lots substantially similar to what is being built today. Just again, that unit count changes. So that's how we would ideally prefer a concept that applies district-wide and we're not, cherry picking lots here and there. And so ideally, if we can make it work with 10-foot front setbacks, 15 rear, 15 sides or similar, maybe 10 sides, anywhere in that realm. We're not going to go less than 10 foot on any setbacks because we too want to promote 1, room for parking, 2, room for open space and yard space and trees. So those are kind of our own set floors, 10 foots and maybe 15s where they can apply like in the rear for rear yards. So, but if we have to, in order to, I guess, ease concern and scale it and allow it on the smaller lots but not the larger lots, we would certainly consider that, and that way the larger lots are, I guess, more ample open space, if you want to call it that, or setbacks, and promoting more space rather than street level density and neighborhood density. So,
and the coverage protection as well, right? Have those change?
Yeah, so lot coverage could change. We've ideally been working within the 25% requirement. It's generally worked out fairly well. We would love to see 30% just to promote, again, flexibility in a design. Maybe some lots achieve that 30% lot coverage, maybe some are more at 25% because they'd rather have a porch or a patio or something in their setbacks or rear space that is better than an extra 100 square foot kitchen or something like that. So it's just about promoting the flexibility and choice of options is really what we're getting at here. I think I answered your question.
So with regards to adjusting the smaller lots, but let's say preserving larger lots. So you talked about some of the benefits of doing it right itself for some reasons, which is great. But if one were to apply it, as we saw, to a larger lot, it seems to be really significant. Whereas that not necessarily true.
You mean more units?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm,
we would hit the capacity potentially quicker. Right.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because the reality is, most of these lots aren't 5,000, they're under 15, right? It would take my lot, which is right at 8,700. Sell a house, someone wants to tear it down, 8,700. How much can they put there? How are you gonna grade these? They're not gonna, like, subdivide the lot. They
No.
can't do that.
Nope.
They've gotta keep it
Yep.
at 8,700. Right? So it kind of ties in with Anna's question, is then, what can you do with that? How do you
1.5 is
Are
a
you
problem
gonna,
in the
like,
winter when you can't park.
tier this so that they can do more than a 4?
no.
Like, you do a mid-rise
People
sale?
get by that way.
No. So that's again coming back to, we'd rather have a conforming district that all controls apply to every lot. 35-foot height, 10-foot front setback, 10-foot side, 15 rear, let's just call it for the sake, 1.25 parking per unit. That's like almost our ideal. I don't exactly know that that gets us compliance. I think it does. We're testing it right now with the state, but like that's just like, you know, okay, we didn't lessen things too much on an 8,000 square foot lot. When you're looking at, you know, 2,000 square foot house at 25% gross, not net, you're gonna be limited in your unit count because, you know, and one thing that we're considering as well and we're playing with is a maximum unit count, a maximum unit count of 6 units on a lot. That way even a 15,000 square foot lot is limited to 6 units, no matter what the structure they build is, if it could fit more on its interior. That almost gets us compliance. It's pretty close to the 15 units per acre. We've alternatively considered a density maximum, like 25 to 30 units per acre on a lot. It just, that really starts to scale things up a bit, like as soon as you, like there are large lots. There's a 20,000 square foot lot in this area. There's a 30,000 square foot lot area in this area. That's when you start getting into like the 15 unit structures, at least under the density. Whether that fits under height and dimensional controls, unlikely, but under density they could do up to 15 to 20 units on a larger lot. But that still comes back to form, and where we're trying to push right now that once we get the zoning done, we want to try to come up with some form and design parameters, and that we could promote on larger lots. Maybe it's more of the courtyard style development, and you have 6 to 8 smaller individual units in and around that lot that like share a common space and courtyard development styles. So we, you know, those are the concepts we're playing with, and we're going to promote or release in early November and kind of put some feelers out of like, is the maximum unit density, maximum unit count more preferred, which severely more restricts your density and building limitations and forms, or if we can do the maximum density, if that feels appropriate to others, and then we couple that with the design and encouragement that we're not looking at mid-rise developments on larger lots. Is that satisfactory as well? Because that just, it gives you more of that diverse stock rather than limiting yourself, because when you look at the building world, you're looking at 1, 2, 4 units, and then it typically jumps to 8. Like, how often do you see a 6-unit structure? You know, it's not very plausible. So the 6-unit restriction just kind of gives us limitations, I guess. And it's a nice starting point, but ideally we're promoting a bit more in our dream concept.
When I was doing this, I took this, if you take this 15 square foot building and you multiply it by 3 levels and you divide it by 4 units, each unit's only 1,100.
I think that's a great size for it. I live in a 1,000 square foot triple decker right now. unit, 3 units. Everybody's just under 1,000 square feet. As a young adult living on my own, I have more than enough space for my office use, my bedroom, and my living room and gaming space. And so ideally that's actually, yeah, but I think that's what we're trying to promote, is that young adults and those on their own can afford to live in Reading versus just your, I guess, above average income household, family household income that on the subdivisions we're seeing today under existing controls are selling at 1.4 million, 1.6 million plus. Yep, I admittedly cannot afford to live in Reading. I just can't do it, so. So I guess when you think of it that way, they could build that to a giant single family structure and sell that giant single family structure for $1.8 million, $2 million. So now you put it to 3 units, they're $900,000 a piece, and maybe, I guess that increases their overall sale value, but it's also promoting 3 cheaper units than what could be done under single family. And I think under this concept, and it's going to take a while to build, but there's a lot of research that shows as you continue to build market rate housing and small housing, it generally drives rents down and rates down. So what we focused on in the last 10 years is affordable, deed-restricted housing, which is great housing, needed housing, but it in itself alone is not enough because it just continues to drive up prices. There are affordability restrictions, and the developer has to increase his market rate units, which then leads to the neighboring properties upping their market rate values, and so it's just a cyclical cycle of. So this alone is not the answer. There's multiple housing needs, public and housing authority development, mixed use, multifamily units, single family units, and your denser mid-rise units. We have to do all of it, and unfortunately what we've done to date is the 2 ends of the spectrum, and we have almost nothing in between, so.
Space
where are you looking
and you say, oh, well, if I
for
increase
this
my
development?
April 2024. So our next steps after tonight, and I should probably wrap up people's discussions soon, we will hold another one of these in early November where we'll release our concepts, 2 to 3 concepts that we would like to see potentially move forward, probably ranking them, saying this is our ideal, this is the second one we can fall back to, and third is going to be downtown district, which we haven't talked about here, but we've heard that nobody really wants to do downtown because we'd have to reverse a lot of zoning that was done in 2021, 2022. We'd basically have to go back, reverse all of those zoning changes and do more, which, one day we'll have to have that conversation to open up downtown development. Yeah, ready?
This is 20 feet, this is 30 feet, this is
Yeah.
35 feet. Most of the older homes are 20 feet.
Yep.
Do you have, so I
So
know
if you put
next
something
to
that's
me,
35
no
feet
next to them, but there's several.
You can have today, two families,
Where you
three
do
families.
you have any examples in these areas of something that fits in nicely?
I do.
with what-
I sure do. Yep. Yeah. Yep. I'll pull a few up.
Because we are proposing incorporating this into areas that have been separate from single family.
Sorry, what was the question?
People feel very strongly about traditional shadow.
Brings the house closer.
And I think
But I wouldn't give it.
next to your house today.
And we will bring the PTTI soon. We're going to bring this concept out here on fire.
Wait for the transition, we're probably good now.
That's fine.
I'm kind of bummed out.
Okay, we're probably going to give it like 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to get up, do a quick spiel, and then we'll do mapping, if you guys are sticking around.
Wonderful job. I get to go.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Very, very nice to meet you.
You as well.
Requirements with density.
How many school districts do we have? I mean, I know there's at least 2.
House, like sale
I
with
think the elementary schools, all
mean reaching the density based on like the mid-rise development or single family.
Or I guess fundamentally.
I was gonna say, I think there's at least 3.
If we were to change zoning and no one in
Yeah, there's at least 3.
again.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, so there is no build requirement, there is no build mandate, we just have to have the zoning in place, and if nobody ever builds a 3-unit
See a lot of
structure,
shopping centers being.
We're still in
I'll do
compliance.
it, yeah.
The question is, and I'm sure we're gonna address it before we start the district drawing exercise, it doesn't need to be continuous.
At least 50% of it, so call it 20 to 25 acres needs to be continuous, and I'll say that's a contiguous district adjoining.
Okay, gotcha. So that was actually gonna be my question, if you could like shut down or have some designated area that is zoned.
Yep.
That's your transition to.
Yeah, so if I can, I guess from what I've heard from this table is that slightly lesser setbacks, slightly lesser parking, and lot coverage as exists works and might be appropriate.
I think you also do the minimum that you need to qualify.
Yeah, so that's what we have to test and make
Second,
sure
like,
it works.
the first thing you do is drop that minimum size down to 5,000, and how close does that alone get you? And then like
Done
what
that.
other pieces do you have to add in to meet the minimum?
Yeah, exactly. So I will speak more to it in November. I guess I'll give you guys a quick plug into what that will look like, but we have tested 5,000 square foot lots under existing zoning parameters. It does not get us the density. It's at like 10 units per acre, allowing a maximum of 4 units on a lot, I should say. When we do it, allowing up to 6 units on a lot, there's a certain area that might achieve it, but others do not. So that's going to kind of come back down to
Are you able to plug in these parameters into the computer and it will automatically do it for you, or do you have to do this manually?
I gotta do it manually.
I'm so sorry.
I got 52 questions that I gotta plug in every time. But
You said it has to be 60 acres?
we have to minimum 43 acres. So, and at least half of that, so call it 20 to 25, has to be here. The rest could be elsewhere in town, but ideally we're sticking here if possible. Yeah.
So I anticipate that there will be a number of times for residents weddings, but you see that still lots.
Yeah, so there are conforming lots. It's nowhere near.
Yeah, how much do we have that's conforming now? I mean, that's by right.
So in this half mile, it is about 8% of single-family lots comply with the minimum requirements. Yeah.
We are like 2 on our property line on one side, so we have to do this anymore.
Yeah.
We're also a historic house.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That fun stuff too.
So it's not, we're not introducing.
Let me just see if everybody's ready to take the next steps.
So we have. I don't either. So we have quite a few lots that are zoned for single family, but already are.
It's, the way they designed it.
They're all grandfathered in.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, they don't meet the current.
Yeah, but the developers aren't building multifamily homes there, right? They're still choosing to build larger families.
Yeah, that we don't have to worry about.
The fact that it's zoned for single family means that's why when he was talking about those buildings up there, that's why they had to go through such a long process to
Where you could
basically rebuild the same building, single family zone.
Right, listen, you've got.
He's also like,
Oh, everyone. There is no.
Right, so what I'm saying is that the developer could have had an option to pop out a building that is 6 units. They chose not to, they chose to construct 2 very large buildings.
But they didn't have an option.
So the grandfathering part is only applicable to like keeping your current structure?
Pre-existing.
It doesn't
Yeah.
carry it over to any new structure. Got it, okay. Or we already. Okay. That's,
All right.
I misunderstood that.
I hope that was a helpful exercise for everybody. It sounded like there was a lot of great conversations. I'm going to quickly just maybe ask our facilitators and myself to summarize what we heard from our tables. And for me, I guess what we've heard is that lesser setbacks, slightly lesser parking, maybe the lot coverage staying the same and other dimensional, like height staying the same is appropriate, especially when you look at the smaller lots, because what we found, and I hope that you found too, is that as the lots get smaller, they're naturally constraining themselves from denser, higher unit builds. So, excuse me. So a lot of our conversation wrapped around setbacks and what that means, and parking, where it's going to be, where it can be, how does it fit onto the lot. We talked a lot about individual projects as well and what it means, and how the zoning as a whole works to reach us compliance. So it's a lovely discussion. Thank you guys. I guess I'll pass it to Mary. Did you have any high-level takeaways?
Very similar.
Great.
Great discussion about setbacks, about parking, about, I think again, people are very open to potentially reducing setbacks, potentially reducing parking. I think people haven't gone through the exercise to kind of understand some of the challenges.
Great. Ben, did you hear similar or new?
Very similar. We discussed the provision of underground parking, which is interesting. I think for this type of development, it's a little expensive to dig underneath for it, but we'll leave that to developers. But parking was one thing that we were willing to sort of reduce in exchange for density and sort of maximizing that development potential. And then I think other than that, the other groups covered mostly everything. Am I missing anybody's really important points from this group?
I heard one, I don't know what was present in the other group, but I heard more value keeping open space in the park.
Interesting. We almost had an opposite conversation where we would like to promote pushing the building further to the front, 10-foot setback, front setback, so that they have ample rear space and private space in the yard, but all under consideration. So that's the point of these exercises, so we can take it all.
We had one comment about the shade that higher, more height will cast. But we did mention that it's allowed 35 feet today.
Correct.
And that will continue to be a constraint.
Correct. We have no intentions of raising height limits at this time.
But if we do affect the setbacks, then potentially there's more encroachment of that shade. So,
Agreed. Duly noted. Thank you. All right. Well, that was great. So we did all of that because we hope it helps you understand the constraints of a lot, and that when we're looking at compliance, it really comes down to an equation. So the tool that we have to look for to comply with and plug all of these zoning parameters in is a GIS-based model tool, and there's a lot of technical terms I can throw at you. But at the end of the day, we have to plug in all of these things like the minimum lot sizes, the parking, the lot coverage and open space setbacks, and all of these other details, max units, max density, which we talked about at our table. All of that factors into a series of 51 plus questions that we have to run again and again and again and again based on all of the different concepts that we want to look at. So we've been doing that. We've done some preliminary analysis. We're starting to get some feedback from that now and understanding what that means for going forward that we can hopefully share with you in the near future. But all in all, it's a great discussion, and the feedback you've given tonight will help guide us to finding zoning that reaches the desires of the community and achieving compliance in this tool. So again, maybe you talked about it, maybe you didn't, but non-conforming parcels are kind of ruled out of the tool. Excluded land is ruled out of the tool as well. Parking areas considered, all of these different things that you likely talked about. So as we adjust each and every one, it just impacts the compliance model, which is why it's important that you're here tonight and helping us guide it and craft it now, because the sooner we have compliant districts and we know, the sooner we can start understanding that, okay, if we were to change anything from this, what does it mean for compliance? And when we bring it to the floor of town meeting, floor amendments will be extremely difficult due to the delicate nature of this zoning that needs to be compliant with this tool. So thank you again for coming tonight. I want to take a second to just kind of reestablish the forms that we're looking at under our current concept, which is again this missing middle housing. Maybe you're looking at dupes, maybe you're looking at triplexes, maybe on larger lots you're looking at courtyards that can fit up to 4, 6, 8 units on a lot. Keep this in mind again, because what we're going to do next is ask you to determine where you feel these forms are appropriate. So we're again looking to consider having our whole zoning district within this half mile, but there's nothing restricting us from going beyond that. The minimums that you have to be aware of when you're about to draw your district is that at least 50% of our required 43 acres, so let's just call it between 20 and 25 acres, at least has to be in here. So we do have to do some zoning in here, but try not to stick to the 43 acres. Don't worry about that. Let's think about what makes sense for a zone holistically and how it supports your town and how it works in harmony across the entire area, and not just shove it into one small pocket. So again, we're kind of looking in this area. We've provided you with 2 maps. One is of that half mile, one is of town-wide if you want to consider other areas. And we're going to ask you to draw some districts. Draw some borders where you feel that these uses are most appropriate. So what we'd ask you to do is follow some natural boundaries, whether that's roadways, open space, wetlands, other zoning district borders. Consider walkable distance to the amenities, to the train depot. Look for equal distribution across this half mile. Please try not to split a lot in half. Our entire goal is to have no split zone lots under this new zoning, because split zone lots are very difficult to explain and deal with. Don't worry about it being too big. As I had mentioned, do not limit yourself to reaching the bare minimum. Please just think what makes sense for this entire zone, this entire use, and how it really fits the picture of the future of Reading. So the only limitations are your own imagination, but remember, each section has to be at least 5 acres, at least half of it has to be within that half mile, and at least 1/2 of your zone has to be, what did I say? Oh, contiguous. So we need at least 1 25-acre piece, and we need at least one that to be in the half mile. So I hope that makes sense. Your facilitators can likely explain it in a bit more detail and better than even I can. So let's start drawing.
So when you're thinking about drawing a coordinate, think about natural boundaries.
Yes. I have markers here.
Talking a little more about expanding outside of this. What are you talking about within this?
I am fully confident we can fit it within the half mile. But do not limit yourself to that if you don't want to.
Copies of maps, and draw multiple maps. At the end of this, I am
At
going
the
to
first
take
session
around.
last, I thought you were
No, we were always talking about including this because the A40 is already there. We just know we'd have to branch out a little bit because it alone is not enough. But we don't really want to limit to just the northeast of downtown. If we're going to do it here, so why not consider over here? I know this is a delicate area for a lot of people, but
No, my thing's always been like take a half to a mile from downtown and start getting better roads, better sidewalks, better cities, and really helping more. Kind of a holistic approach to this.
I fully agree. Yep.
What's that?
Yeah. Oh, please say that more. I need more people to say that. Could I please steal a Sharpie?
Oops. Sorry.
No,
Always.
don't worry about it. So the zoning can go over a park, it's just not going to be developed, and it's excluded from our tool model because it's open space and municipal space that isn't to be developed. So, but the zoning can certainly go over it just as S15 goes over it now. Yep,
This business C zone down here.
yep,
That's already multifamily housing, right?
yep.
Like the mid-rise almost.
So that business C zone is Reading Woods, which is over 200 units of mid-rise dense multifamily housing. That dark blue in the right corner is the A80, our other area where multifamily is allowed by right. It's built out with Summit Towers and gazebo towers. We cannot consider those areas under this law because they don't meet what is termed neighborhood scale. We are not allowed to put zoning over what is a single development tract, and Reading Woods is a single development tract. Summit Towers is a single development tract. Gazebo Circle is a single development tract. So we can't use those areas, and personally I think it would be not ideal to zone them anyways when they're built out, because it changes nothing. So, just draw where you think the forms make sense. If you say within that whole half mile.
Along these, like Salem Street out to the Rotary.
So you would want the
But not
zoning,
all for sides.
Where we choose would also
Yeah,
then,
especially if it's a bus route.
just because, I should say this,
bus
just because the
goes
circle
down.
of the region doesn't mean it's necessary.
I think it comes back down Salem Street, or maybe if you,
No, there's two
Reduce the
buses
minimum
out.
lot
There's
size,
only
One that
one.
goes
there's a bunch of
down
5,000 square foot
into
lots.
Wakefield and one that goes.
Just
We're
with
reducing it to what works.
got it. Got
We're
it.
gonna, the lot size is obviously something we're gonna reverse engineer.
Okay. Okay.
Again, just because we have a particular number.
I think if that they truly
Yeah.
feel that a 4-unit structure
That's right,
fits
okay, yeah.
the character of those areas, yeah. Yeah.
What are you looking for? How much you need? Oh, here, for this.
I think the uncommon parking is just too much water.
I was gonna say,
I was thinking the same.
it's pretty hard to achieve on these lots. It would
So
likely be, yeah.
Pumps are coming out of every house in my neighborhood for sure.
200 is equal to.
Or the alternative goes to.
If you go lower than that, it's hard to get.
It is.
In every.
So, sorry, go ahead.
What is the difference between, not a difference, but I guess the thought process behind
200 acres is.
focusing a lot on multifamily homes in one section versus having it somewhat uniformly distributed throughout the town?
Yeah, so I guess that's why I come back to like those circular cores where like your downtown is this core, your gentle density multifamily housing is this core. It should be northeast, southwest, this radius, and then your single family supports that from there and is another rounded core. So rather than, I guess historically what's been done is these cherry pickpocketed areas of A80 for Summit Towers, and let's shove it way down there, and let's shove Reading Woods way down there, because there were old vacant underutilized spots. It made sense to put housing there, but they're just way far out of the way. They really promote car and vehicle travel down there to get to downtown, to get to their amenities.
But
So,
we're looking just within the circle. So besides the aesthetics of gradually transitioning from multi-family homes to single-family homes as we venture farther away from the center.
right.
Like if we're just examining this area, again, I don't think I have full appreciation on why, I've drawn squares. Right? Like, all right, so let's slap a bunch of like 6-family homes here versus having individual, let's say the lots that are on the larger side, just kind of picked out.
So that's could be considered spot zoning. Spot zoning is actually illegal. You can't spot zone over individual lots for individual uses. But I guess what you could do, you can have multiple districts, and we can have sub-districts within a district. We can do different things with different areas. Ideally, I guess in my world, like zoning is as easy to understand and flexible as possible, because builders, planners, nobody understands it. So that's why we try to promote the uniform zone over a sub-district where like maybe your sub-district closer to the downtown, you say it's 30 acres per lot, 30 units per acre per lot. And outside of that, you say it's 10 acres per unit per lot. And trying to gradually do it, it just makes it a bit more difficult for development and understanding.
So, I don't know if anybody brought this up, but is any of this industrial area?
So you can most certainly consider the industrial area. I guess when we think about our concept of like this smaller, moderate, multifamily use, we don't know that it meets the long-term vision for the industrial use zone. Reading has very limited commercial space in zoned area already to take
hasn't
away.
really been
Yeah, I think our plan is to start looking at that area and start visioning what else it could be. Maybe housing's a factor in there, but I don't think it's this concept of housing that fits in there.
Because that's a large part of all of this, is just
Yeah,
that
yeah.
space.
If you do feel that mid-rise mixed-use development in the industrial district is a preferred use,
Prefer to see a lot of the mid-rise stuff, like you have commercial on the first floor, apartments above it, especially downtown by the depot. A lot of the buildings down there are sitting vacant, but I recognize some of them might be considered historic. So I think that's why the writing building is being rehabbed on the first floor, and then they're adding some storage spots.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're not, they're rehabbing the building, they're not tearing it down.
Correct. That's their intent. Yeah.
So similar to what Woburn has done with their old abandoned mall, where they turned it into a bunch of little shops and actual housing.
Right. Right.
I walk downtown with my dogs all the time.
So there's a lot of factors to that, and I agree. I don't like to see them vacant. We promote 40R through its commercial development and it being vacant. Yep.
I think we need to talk a little bit about the zoning.
Okay.
But one thing is, mixed use is not a part of MBTA communities compliance model.
So, no. I guess the short answer is no. It's severely limited, and you can't use it alone. You can't require mixed use, nor can it alone achieve your unit capacity.
You can't require.
Is it because of density there is just not viable due to the non-residential that makes you?
It's more about a lot of times, I guess, when the state was considering this and what its parameters were, they know that affordability is severely limiting to denser development, and commercial space is severely limiting to denser development because it takes away parking unit space. It adds a lot of it's vacant sometimes. It's not a moneymaker in terms of rent per square foot anymore, at least in Reading it's really not. So what the state didn't want is for you to say you have to have 50% of your gross floor area be commercial space, and that's just unviable for any project. So to keep it a bit more simple, and they actually just re-released some new guidelines kind of promoting mixed use, but it's just not the answer really, so, which is another reason we haven't really considered downtown.
So we're in MBTA too, I love this, and I think these were like the higher threshold for one, we have the train field, because we have a single bus route, it pushes us into that extra.
Reduction in setbacks, parking.
We have one bus route, one's been lost in
Right, I was gonna say, the only one that I noticed from the depot to Oak Road.
Yep.
Is there any way that we can ask the MBTA to give us more bus routes?
I am on it. I am trying to get them to do their job. I am trying for increased bus service. I am trying for increased ridership services to the depot.
To go through the exercise also, because I think
Get to Blueberry or Stoneham
it
without
helps you
having to use my
think
car.
about the
Totally.
challenges in designing a district, right? Which is like, do
Yeah.
you choose
So-
different blocks? Do you choose roads that feel like natural barriers? Do
Yep.
you, like you
Yep.
design different
Yeah.
levels of intensity, which we love,
No.
right?
So
Definitely interested
More
in that.
buses then change the threshold that we need to
No.
achieve?
No, because we're
No.
already at that elevated
Right.
threshold because we have that one bus.
right.
Oh, we're already at the max?
Yeah, we're already at the max threshold, that's
we could have buses everywhere.
Yeah, so it's basically like subway communities had a faster paced schedule, higher requirements, commuter rail communities followed that, and then bus communities and then adjacent communities kind of all work themselves under that. So being a commuter rail community, we are not subject to the rapid transit requirements. So I feel like people are struggling with this
Yes,
a
are
little
there
bit.
specific
Yep.
reasons why you would want to exclude
Build out
certain areas? I mean, I'm kind of
to some level.
struggling with what we're
So
trying to do.
I guess we personally feel that excluding the downtown district and the industrial district is our first step because they
And
just.
historic.
Theoretically.
Yep, we actually personally want to avoid the historic district just because we know that's a prevalent area, we love it, we want to keep it, we don't really want to promote too much change down there.
One of the things we've been
So we look at our
discussing
high
is
commercial spaces that we're excluding and our historic spaces that we're excluding. I think pretty much everything else is up for grabs, so.
if you
What
have
percentage
space,
of
if you have
all
a
of
12,000 or
this is
15,000 or
left when you
20,000
remove
square
all
foot
this,
lot,
do
you
you
have
know?
space for nice big setbacks.
High
right?
percentage.
Build a bigger house,
So,
so you're not anywhere near your neighbors.
Downtown has 45 acres, let's call it. The S15 has 300 plus acres within this radius, the A40 is about 20. So that's why we've been looking to combine that A40 and S15 into a new zone that promotes these concepts. So I guess,
Yeah, I guess what's stopping us from changing S15 altogether?
No, I mean, it all depends on the economic viability.
I love your guys' high.
It's like an Eastern meeting and there's been new development.
I-
Because the way that it was changed means it's not
Only
economically
S15 in the
viable.
blue zone.
Right.
Yes, yep,
you
so
can't actually
S15 spans a vast majority of the town, and S20 kind of is its bordering parameters. I personally agree, it would be wonderful to say, let's just do all of S15 and say, let's promote this everywhere and in every which way. I think that's a larger, I guess I have to be cognizant of what's gonna pass town meeting and what's not. And doing S15 as a whole,
Yeah, when you look at it in the larger context.
yeah,
So 40R
it's
is our
just,
smart growth overlay, which sits on top of our business fee.
I agree, it
Right.
is, right.
What we
Yeah,
got going on over here.
I feel like, exactly, you're allowing more and for any, exactly, and so I think this is one step toward one day the state as a whole and many other communities getting there of saying, hey, single family is not your most sustainable use, it's not your most efficient use of land, it's actually very much the opposite, but at the end of the day, there is still a desire and a need for single family housing because a lot of people do love that and want their space and so, but to your point, we're not restricting it, right, so,
Building a single family.
right, so, yep, fully agree.
I think that is what I was trying to pick at when I was proposing somewhat randomized approach. Because, like, I have squares that are shown here, right? The folks in those squares do not remain singled out. I mean, like, your neighbor is going to be without like.
Right, that's what I
Right.
was thinking, like, if you concentrated in a certain area downtown, it would make sense, but like, also, I don't see the point of like saying, oh, let's just draw around this neighborhood right here, but not over here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where it would have to be somewhere along the radius, somewhere
so
like a jagged line around
the whole
radius.
thing doesn't have to be congruent. Again, I keep saying this, but in an ideal world, yeah, that it is, but it doesn't have to be. So I guess like when I've looked at it from a preliminary review, I come up with like a pocket over here that gets up to Middlesex and a triangle over here that naturally stops at John Street and a pocket down here that gets into some of these further areas that are already dense and walkable and would be nice to reopen the character down there. So they're all separate and I could, potentially combine them up and around here and get crazy, but you guys don't have to worry about all that. I have to worry about all that.
Like, people will develop over time.
over time, but it's not gonna be like all of a sudden in 2 years,
Yep.
the character.
That's the goal.
So it's also the same
Yep.
that, like,
Drawing the district.
downtown,
And Liz White was talking about this, like,
right, but still, 90.
will the state look at our district when we can say, and run it through calculators, and consider something that is possible?
Where it goes, yes, it spits out the unit capacity and the density.
And so does that dictate where some of these boundaries are drawn versus right? Like
Right.
here, like you have many parcels. So those are only 3 units a piece versus here, you know, it could be that this is like.
So I guess how I try to frame it is like, if we have the shapes, now we have recommended limits, and if things have to increase, you either do lesser restrictions in smaller area or more restrictions across the broader
But
space.
that's the wrong exercise we're gonna do is like taking input.
Exactly.
Although it doesn't really have to probably be bigger because there's way more there than what we need, right?
Yeah.
Just cut out this, cut out that.
Yep.
I think it should be bigger. I think it should stay less that much.
Yeah. Yep.
That's about 43
I love
acres.
this. This is great. This is perfect. Yep. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. It's challenging.
Yeah.
That the industrial area has a lot of challenges. Part of it being ownership. So.
Right. Some of your owners. Yeah. So my goal, is to collect all of your maps and then consider how I can make a shape that meets almost all of them and looks at all of them. And it's probably gonna end up something like that because somebody might say, "Hey, Ash Street is a great area, and why did we separate business A? Like, who did that? Why did we do that?"
So what Brad just pointed out, which was really good observation, is that the area that we're looking for, 43 acres, is about that size. Because that's what this is.
Yeah. Yep.
Business B,
Yep.
48.
Yep.
That's not that big.
No, it's not that big.
It's really not
We
that
have,
big.
so again, there's 300 acres of S15 here. We have 20,000, the 2,000, I should say 20,000.
The problem is,
Exaggerated, 2,000.
has to meet the right criteria.
Right.
Because I think you said right now, under our current restrictions.
Well, yeah, we still have to change.
It's also, we still have to change it also because
So then if we make the 5,000 change the line, we have just 10 acres of this small area.
Right.
The smaller the squares we pick are more than squares.
more challenging.
So in my opinion, I'd be more in favor of changing
Which is like
everything
an
a little
old,
bit
like
rather
separate
than picking
piece of
smaller
discussion.
areas. I do want to point
If
out,
we had wanted to.
if there's one part of the industrial zone that we might want to touch, it might be like this tiny little corner right here.
It'll be like.
Because that's where like there's that spirit of Halloween that's within it.
Yeah.
There's the liquor
How you
store
have
there.
to.
Yeah.
I kind of want to keep the market basket, it's a little selfish there. But like that kind of corner area that's near the downtown.
Yeah.
It's mostly empty.
Yep.
Parking garage there, make it like, I don't know, have a shuttle that brings people to downtown so that.
Yeah. I'm with you. So, to that point is how it all kind of comes back together. We are going to design a shape, and then we have to test the parameters that we found in that shape. And if those parameters don't work in that shape, you either more broadly expand the shape or you lessen the parameters in it. So that's what we'll be messing with.
It's a choice, right? So if you build them, you have to.
This is perfect. Will you stand up at town meeting?
Yeah, so whatever shape you come up with, I'll propose an amendment to change I'll have you there in real life.
I'll be plugging away. Yep, I literally will be.
So you scroll just a little bit.
It is very plausible. I don't know how many.
What would be nice though, and I know you have options that you've kind of put up here, is to have those options available rather than just one
Yeah.
thing. And you might be
Well,
proposing one thing,
Yeah.
but then it might be,
I want to bring them all before town meeting for consideration. When I'm at town meeting, I want just one
yes,
file.
okay,
Yeah.
good. So we have one more opportunity to kind of
Yeah,
look at
like
the options.
6 because we're gonna do our November forum, release them.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a town meeting update to get them
November.
involved. Yeah.
Okay.
We might have a December forum to kind of rehash the concepts and where we've pushed them further. And then what we have to do is open the certified public hearings with the planning board, which is when we get into the real nitty gritty of the exact bylaw placements and sections and language.
Because it would be nice to have, you know, once you have like however many options you're considering, not at the final town meeting, but what the pros and cons are
Yep,
of
I'm
those.
doing a SWOT analysis of all of it. Yep, strengths and weaknesses. So this,
Because people want to, you know, that goes a long way to getting something approved.
yeah, totally.
Just to
So
make sure that it was well.
I think what we'll end up doing is providing one shapefile and then multiple concepts that can work in that.
I was curious, 'cause I
And so
looked
we'll
around
look
the
at like
it's
a
not very
6 unit per
in that
lot
area, and I was
maximum.
curious
Say the
why.
weakness of this is you get less flexibility in design and larger lots are still severely limited. When we do if we did a density maximum, the strength is more flexibility, but the con might be maybe you're looking at more units for those who find that a con, if you find that a con. So things like that, but all in that same shapefile possible.
Industrial zoning? So
Yep.
there's really no concern about neighbors.
The grandfathered in double lots.
Yeah.
There's no grandfathered in double lots.
What do you mean double
Off the top of my
lots?
head.
Like what I was talking about?
Well, they have an extra lot, and they were grandfathered in, and when the zoning was changed, they had X amount of time to build on them. If they don't build on them, they're not buildable.
Yeah, in that area, yeah.
So,
Depending on the size.
I have a not buildable lot, but it was never that situation.
Are there a lot of them?
there's a handful, half dozen to a dozen probably, but I'd say they would be buildable should they meet the minimum area and frontage requirements. As long as they have a line fronting a right of way, as long as the lot line is along the right of way. There's no possible way that they're gonna fit under subdivision control law. We require 60-foot throat and a 60-foot bulb. There's no way you're fitting that on a 15,000 square foot lot. So squeeze in another lot, 5,000, to divide it into 3, unless you are. Right, so I guess like, unless you are, I'm trying to find a lot here that works, like, I guess this guy here who is somewhat long, he might have 200 feet of frontage there. Maybe he says, rather than me building a single 3-unit structure, I do 60 feet frontage lots at 5,000 square foot and build 3 individual single-family homes. So that's the potential and the flexibility that this could allow for. You can either do a single structure or you can do 3 smaller structures. And so as long as they meet frontage and lot area, they could build it. Should have built where
It's the same density thing.
Yep.
So I have a question about the difference between business B and business A.
Yeah.
So are you also thinking of excluding business A?
Yep. So, because again, our desire for the 2 business districts and the one further down here and the industrial is to continue to promote mixed use or commercial development, and where mixed use and commercial is so hard to squeeze into MBTA communities, it just doesn't evolve itself into it. So I think, so what we've done in business A recently is we created a mixed use bylaw in 2019. It's actually very strong parameters. We have not seen an application yet. There might be one coming. It's a special permit, mixed use, it's high parking requirements, it's super high commercial requirements, because that's what we wanted to promote, was commercial. It hasn't worked, so it's just kind of similar to downtown. Okay, maybe we need to reevaluate that, and yes, we want commercial, but how do we continue to promote that while getting development, right? So Yeah, commercial is just soft, I guess, in general, both in terms of retail rates that it rents for, and I guess people are focused on downtown retail space right now, or I guess like Linfield Market space, where it's a variety of mixed uses that you can walk around and really experience retail. So like your kind of single strip mall, auto zone type things are kind of becoming harder and harder to come by nowadays. So it's hard. We want to promote commercial space because that's important for residential tax rates, and promoting commercial growth and having that viable split. We just need it to be buildable and effective, which is a hard balance to achieve. Yeah, so that's why we're trying to bring it to April. In the case that it doesn't pass, we can try again in November based on the feedback that we heard or got from town meeting. If we did November only and failed it, then we'd be non-compliant by the deadline and face the town getting sued and other, certain elements. So.
The only other thought I had was maybe making a corridor along the main street that would potentially help development, commercial development along there too, for more people living there. But I don't know, you might really piss off the people that they use that fall.
Actually, we've heard a lot from those people that they want more uses down there, and it actually makes very much planning sense that you're tucking housing behind your commercial corridor rather than using your commercial corridor. So to promote density behind it spurs development on it, and so I love that idea.
It's already zoned. Is it already zoned for business?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly like
in and around Business A is single
Business A along the street, then as you go down.
There's like a small patch that's not, but most of it is already zoned.
But you could be looking at like, a small corridor here and here.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah. I love that. I'll push it. I'll push it.
Bus runs along that.
Yep. Yeah, our goal was to put them down at Camp Curtis Guilds, which is down off Haverhill Street by the Rotary. That is just a super logistical challenge because there's so much turnover of generals there and leadership there, and nobody's on the same page down at the National Guard. One person wants to sell the land to us and do it, and the others don't, and so it's just been a challenge to get everybody on the same page, like, hey, this would benefit you and this would benefit us. And we actually just recently kind of reached back out to them to see if they would consider reopening the discussion of the town getting land at Camp Curtis Guilds. So I'm gonna just poke around the other tables, make sure everybody's doing good. So zoning does not typically, design guidelines are typical for your mid-rise downtown development styles because you're talking step backs and all sorts of different change of planes. When we look at these type of uses, there is something called form-based code. Form-based code. It's pretty new. It actually hasn't. There's a few municipalities in Massachusetts that have used it, but mostly for commercial stuff. What form-based code is pretty much it gives you your design for you. It gives builders their designs, and it says whatever you can fit in this box, in this style, go for it. Whether that's 1 unit, 4 units, 8 units, 12 units, here's your box because we like this style. We like the pitch roofs. Whatever you can fit in it, make it work. I think, I try not to get too hung up on design because I too love historic New England architectural design, but we can't restrict building to that, right? So modern developments are nice, modern developments are useful for stormwater infrastructure, flat roofs and things of that nature, and it promotes creativity and difference in your neighborhood, which some people love, some people hate, I know, but I can't restrict you to a New England size 15 lakes. I think we would love to, based on a grant we have, we're gonna work to try to see how we can fit a form-based code into this if and when zoning is approved, and then we can take that zoning and apply some forms to it, so that builds, I guess, it makes builds faster and it makes builds more harmonious with the neighborhood, I guess. So we are gonna look at it, but who has control and say? The builder, I guess, at the end of the day, so.
I've got a road, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming, I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your service.
Nope, so multifamily uses will trigger site plan review with CPC.
Gotcha.
Here we go.
Nice to see you. See you later.
Thank you so much for your question. Fantastic.
I know, but he's just kind of. That team's doing well. They're like hunkering down. We're still working. I think I'm gonna take, if they don't mind, I'm gonna take this. Maybe I can explain it to my kids, right? Have them learn like what it is we're trying to do here. Maybe my husband.
Hello. I do not mean to interrupt people. I know a lot of people are flying out of the room and getting ready to go. We're getting ready to close up right now. So I just wanted to quickly thank you all for coming tonight. It was great discussions. I'm sure great discussions at all the other tables that I'll hear from our staff. Our next steps, I just wanted to let you know, as for your sakes and ours as staff, we've been working with RKG, which is a local firm, testing possible compliance scenarios. We're looking at already at the new minimum lot size requirements that we've talked about tonight, frontages, max unit counts, max density, a whole variety of options that we've discussed tonight. We're already testing. What we want to do is take the feedback that we've heard from you tonight to design specific shape files for moving forward, and then what zoning parameters fit within those shape files. So our goal is to bring 90% of lots into compliance within whatever area we choose, so we'll be working within that framework. Staff's next step, we're going to take again this feedback, develop a more comprehensive map that meets everybody's hopeful intents, and craft those controls, and we are going to release that and many concepts, a handful of concepts, at our next event, which is Wednesday, November 8th. I think we booked this room. I will double check that and confirm that. The info will be on the website, but we will hopefully see you all Wednesday, November 8th, and staff is here at Town Hall for any time for discussions. Shoot us an email, schedule a call, come in at any time, pop in. We're always here. So thank you again. I hope you've learned something, and I hope you found it helpful.
Thank you.